Hello everyone, this is Dawn and I'm back with another video for Honeybee, and today we are going to have some fun, so buckle up. We're going to be doing a lot of ink blending and we're going to be using the lovely layers to create this very gothic, creepy Halloween decoration. And the star of the show today is the lovely layers roses. Now this cuts out all of the pieces you need to build this beautiful rose, and the layering guide is available on the Honeybee website. And you can cut them from different shades of the same color cardstock and stack them together like they've shown in the layering guide. But I chose to do mine all out of one color cardstock, in this case red. I'm going to be doing a ton of ink blending to turn this into almost a black rose with some red, maybe like a dying rose. There you go. It's starting to fade. So I've cut all my pieces. You can see here how they layer all together, and it's time to do our ink blending. I'm going to be using Black Soot Distress Ink and a couple of different blending brushes here. I've got one from Honeybee Stamps and I've got another one from Rabbit Hole Designs. I like to start with the back layer, and I will use the layer that goes directly on top of that as a guide. Really all I need to concentrate on is the portions that will be showing from underneath that top layer. So I'm going to start by putting down a layer of black all around even the hidden areas here in this case, because like I said, I want to do a red rose, but I want it to be almost black, like it is fading or dying, because it's creepy, it's Halloween. And from the side, I don't want those red edges showing from the side. So I am going to add some black to the base of each color as well. Here, I know that this portion is going to be showing from underneath the other layer. So I'm adding a little bit of detail there, and I'm going to check. I'm going to lay that piece on top and check and make sure I'm happy with how it looks. I'm also keeping an eye out for what else is going to be peeking out from underneath. And up here, you can see in that upper left, there's going to be a little bit of rose peeking out from behind that layer right here. I want to make sure that I keep those tips with a little bit of red to them. I don't want them to be completely black. So you can see here I'm double checking again, and I can see where a little bit more is going to be peeking. So I'll just add a little bit more of that black soot, and this time I'm using the Rabbit Hole Bitty blenders here because I can get a little more precision in my blending this way. And like I mentioned, I'm going to come around those edges and darken those up so that any layers from the side, when you layer them on top, you don't have those red edges. And this is the way I'm going to proceed for every petal or every layer of the rose. And you really don't have to overthink this part. You can see there I added some shading that's really not going to be seen. But for me, it helps me to add that extra little bit of shading because I want to make sure that I get that smooth blend of color coming up to the tips so that I get just the right amount of shadow and highlight. You can see there that one little tip there that's sticking out. I want it to be a little bit darker at the base, but brighter at the top, but I don't want it to be the pure red. I don't want anything on this rose to be that pure bright red because again, I'm going for that faded rose, almost dying. So for the bottom layers, I am going to go darker. There's going to be less of that red visible, and it's going to be darker overall. And then each progressive layer is going to get lighter, or it's going to have a little more of that red showing. With each layer, I will double check with the layer that goes on top of it just to make sure that I've got the right amount of shading and I'm focused on the areas that will be showing. So here you can see I'm double checking. Now I'm going to the next layer, starting off with the darker black at the bottom there because I know that's going to be covered, and then making sure that I blend up and leave some red on the areas that will be showing from underneath that top layer. And you'll notice that I have sped this up a little bit. Again, it's a repetitive process, but I wanted to leave it in here so that you guys can see at least my technique for blending to get this realistic shading on these lovely layers. The Lovely Layers is my favorite series with Honeybee, And I just wanted to demonstrate how you can take something that is not meant for Halloween and stretch it. I don't own very many Halloween products, but I do really actually like Halloween. I love all of the creepy stuff. I enjoy it a lot. But what I really enjoy is being able to take these items and grunge them up and add all of this shading and kind of dirty things up and add a little bit of grit and make them more Halloweenish. So I thought roses, perfect. We could do some black or some dying roses in a very Gothic floral arrangement, and I thought that this would be really pretty. So we're getting to the top layers here, and I am shading to add a little bit of depth to each of the petals. So you can see there, I've left a nice highlight there in the middle to create a rounded effect on this petal, darkening up that edge, but leaving that brighter red in the center. Doing the same thing to this petal over here, adding some shading around the edges and making it look rounded so it looks like that petal is actually wrapped around the flower. We're on to the final piece here. So this one will be on the very top. These petals are folded over and coming at you. So they're going to have shading on the inside there where they meet the base of the rose. And then the tips of the petals are going to be lighter. So I'm just continuing to build until I'm happy, and then I can adhere everything together. And for that, I'm going to be using the Honeybee liquid adhesive here. I like to add the glue to the bottom of the petals as I stick them together. That way I have the option of slipping some foam tape in between the layers later if I want to. So I just glue all of them together at the bottom, one on top of the other, and then leave an opening to slip in any foam tape afterwards. And I didn't end up putting any foam tape in between the layers on this particular project, but it is something that I do often, so it's habit now for me to leave myself that option. And you can see here how nicely this is coming together. It's such a great design, and I do really love how much that black, the drama that black shading adds to this, and it pulled off that Gothic vibe that I was going for really well. I originally tried starting with dark gray cardstock and blending those with black, but it was just so flat. It came off as a black rose, but it just lacked any contrast, any saturation. It just, I don't know. I want to say it felt dead, which is what I was going for, but dead not in a good way. This is a dying rose in a good way, if there's a such thing. All right, so once the rose was assembled, I came in with that black soot again and just touched up all the edges. Made them all nice and dark and made them match. All right, so now it's time to work on the stem and the leaves. So I've already done the stem there to the side. You can see that's all one layer. And then there are 2 leaves that you can layer on top. So I'm going to add a little bit of black to those. I cut these from green cardstock. And now I'm just adding a little bit of black soot again to the edges and right down the middle. I want to keep this all very, very moody and very dark. You can see how I'm able to create a lot of movement on this leaf using just black shading. So far we've used 1 dye, we've used red cardstock, green cardstock, and black ink. That's it. All right, so I did the same thing for the other leaf, and then once those were finished, it was just time to adhere them in place. And you can see here that there is a spot for them on the base stem here to just lay those right on top. Again, a little liquid adhesive, glue those in place, and then here is our completed rose. So I also did a little bud there that's included in the set. And this, is a stunner. I can't it turned out way better than I thought it would, even in my head. All right, so let's move on to the rest of the pieces for our arrangement. For the rest of the bouquet, I'm going to fill in with some greenery. These are the Lovely Layers Greenery die set. I'm also going to be using some from the Lovely Layers Winter Greenery. But I've cut these ferns out of a light gray cardstock, and then I've cut these extra leaves out of a different shade of green than I used for the rose. I still wanted a little bit of depth and variation, so I just went with a slightly darker green than I did for the rose stem. And again, we're going to do the same thing to these that we did to the rose itself, but these are much easier. They're going to go much faster because we don't have to worry about sculpting any petals or anything. You might notice that my ink is going on very light. I prefer to work with a drier ink pad because I would much rather layer my color to get deeper color than have to worry about removing color from my brush before coming to my project. So for me, it's easier to work with a pad that's on the drier side and then just keep building my color. And that way I don't get too much color too quick. It doesn't get away from me. I can really assess where I'm putting the color and deepen the color as I want to. I can control it rather than accidentally putting down way too much color. Now here you can see I'm just hitting the edges, bringing some of the ink down the middle of each of these. And again, you don't have to go as far as I do. You can just slap some color on there really. It's still gonna look good. Especially once we come in and do one of my favorite tricks, which is adding some variation in color, adding some speckly bits, because these are they're leaves, right? So these are like ferns, and I don't need that all over even blend, that beautiful blend for florals and nature, things like that. So here I'm going to grab a sea sponge and I'm going to start dotting on some Distress Oxide in ground espresso. And you can see here when I hold this up how much depth that adds and really breaks up some of that color. I'll repeat the same thing for the other fern and then for the other greenery as well. Now off camera, I went ahead and finished all the other pieces. I created another rose and a few more of those rose buds and put my arrangement together. So here you can see all of that beautiful ink blending and just how dark and creepy and gothic this arrangement turned out. I love it so much. Now I need to work on the background, so I'm going to grab my press and seal and I'm going to pick up this entire arrangement and move it over to the side. I know this is pretty much how I want everything arranged. I can make any adjustments as I'm actually adhering it to the base, but right now I want to keep this pretty much where everything is. So I'm going to take that press and seal. I'm going to rub it all over my arrangement so that it makes contact with each piece. And then I can just pick up the whole thing and put it over to the side. And I know that it's not gonna get messed up. It's not going to, and nothing's gonna shift. It's all gonna stay put together on this piece of press and seal. So I'll pull away that back. And then I'll just set this to the side while I work on my background. Now I did the background off camera. It would have just been crazy long if I would have filmed everything. So I focused on the ink blending here, but I used the Grain and Grunge ink paper pad here from Honeybee Stamps. And here you can see I cut a piece and then I just distressed it even more. Now this particular pad has a lot of grungy wood and I just needed it even darker. And then I sewed some, what is this, cheesecloth? I sewed some cheesecloth onto the background. So you can see here, it's sewn down the middle so it won't come off, but I left the edges loose. And this is going to serve as the backdrop for my floral arrangement here. If you wanted, you could stitch it in more places. It holds it in place just going right down the middle, and then I can just lay my whole arrangement right over the top of this. Because this is on press and seal, I can flip my card around and check it and see which way I like it better. And this is the way that I ended up loving it. So I'm going to go ahead and tape my background to my work surface so that it stays in place. I'm going to lay my arrangement right over it. And then I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to burnish one side of my press and seal to my work surface. This will act as a hinge that I can just fold the whole thing back, adhere a layer, fold it back again, adhere another layer, fold it back again, you know, you get the picture. But it keeps everything in place so that I don't have to rearrange everything again. And I usually start with liquid adhesive for my bottom layer. I'm not trying to securely adhere everything at this point. What I'm trying to do is get everything to stay in place. So I've added a little adhesive. I'm going to push that into place, give it a second, and then I'm going to peel back the rest of the arrangement, holding that bottom layer in place. Now I can come in and start adding more adhesive as necessary. And I do this with each layer. I'll put enough adhesive to hold it, and then I will double check and make sure that I don't need any more adhesive anywhere. Like I said, I usually start with liquid adhesive for my bottom layers, and then I will start using foam tape. I like to build a lot of dimension when I create these bouquets. So the back layer is usually flat, and then I will move up to a low profile foam tape, and then I'll move up to a thicker profile foam tape. Here you can see I'm adding adhesive at the base of each of these elements, but I'm leaving the top pieces free. That's so that I can go ahead and adhere it flat onto the card base, and any area that is going to be sticking up, in this case, it's going to be coming out from behind the rose, I can pop those pieces up on foam tape. Even though they're the back layer, there's nothing going to be adhered on top of them. So I can adhere it flat underneath the roses and then come in and tuck foam tape underneath the upper leaves. All right, with that layer secure, I'm moving on to the roses. So here I'm going to go ahead and add in some foam tape. And I'm adding it across anything that is going to be on this level. So that upper rose there, some of these layers of greenery back here. And then we can just flip that right into place, press down, and then pull up our top layer here. Everything that's adhered will stay down. Everything that's not will come up with the press and seal. Double check any areas where I need extra foam here. Tuck those into place. And then we can adhere the final layer. So I've added the foam tape to the back of this one, and we'll just flip that over in place. And just like before, I will go around and check if there are any loose areas that might get caught on anything or that just need a little extra adhesive or some foam tape, and I'll tuck those into place. All right, so here is the final arrangement, and let's take a look at the finished project. I decided to mount this onto a thick piece of chipboard. I originally was going to do a slimline card, but decided to turn it into decor instead. So I inked the edges of this piece of chipboard to match that grain and grunge paper. So the finished size ended up being 3 3/4 by 8 3/4. And I think that this is going to be so cool displayed in my craft room on a picture easel. Now, if crepe is not your thing, don't worry. All of these techniques can be applied to any color palette. So hopefully you'll take away something that you can incorporate into your own style. If you're looking for any of the featured products, they'll be linked and listed in the description box below. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.